Hey guys, good Monday morning, and thanks for checking out the latest long-range forecast here from BAM Weather. Michael Clark with BAMWX.com and the weather portal. Got a lot to discuss. We're going to look at Friday's weather model performances rolled into Monday. Kind of look and see how things trended over the weekend, where things are going or look to go, and look at some of our analogs, some of our top pattern drivers here, and kind of want to show you what we said to our customers last week, and then what we're thinking here in terms of going forward, because we certainly do have some concerns that overall any type of widespread moisture relief is going to be hard to come by for a large chunk of the central U.S. here, and we've got a cold front coming that's going to allow for a brief pullback in some of this heat. But what's coming late June into early July is something we're certainly going to talk about in this video here today. So let's get right into it. Weekend rainfall numbers. This is the last 72 hours. You can see some scattered to light, even locally moderate heavy rains across North Dakota here, northwestern North Dakota. For the most part here across the heart of the corn belt, the soybean belt, really no weekend rainfall to mention here, at least of any significance, if you will. All right, let's check on this, because a lot of folks, when we look at drought conditions, when you look at the technical definition of them, aside from what the commodities might think, or the different sectors may think, droughts grow over time. They don't typically just happen like that. They can, and they do, but not typically. So what I want to do is I kind of wanted to illustrate the 60-day percent of normal precipitation from April 7th here on the right. And you can see a large chunk here that I highlighted, about 25 to 50% of the normal precip over that time. So less than half for a lot of folks here, especially across Iowa. For Des Moines, this is the second driest start to the year ever since data records started. We're rivaling 1989, I believe. The driest was 1988. This is very, very dry for Des Moines, for central Iowa. This here on the left is just the last 14 days. Kind of see the same area, except the issue here is there's been some growth here, all right, further to the south. Just the last 2 weeks. Now, it hasn't been extraordinarily warm, as you can see our temperature departures bottom right last 30 days. Last 60 days. Bottom left here last 14 days. And so it hasn't been incredibly warm, thankfully, except for what happened here over late weekend of the weekend. Multiple temperature records shattered. All those dots you see popping up was from significant heat, mid-upper 90s to 100-degree temperatures. You look at about a half an inch or more of water zapped from the soils daily. The third, the fourth, the fifth, here across the north central plains due to the extreme heat. So it was an incredibly warm stretch with multiple 100-degree temperature readings. This is what we put out last week on the 1st. We talked about the over the top, the extremely above normal warmth here, and the much below normal precipitation. And these were our final June calls here on the left, all right? And what you can see, we forecasted the second warmest June possible here at a 270 CDD. I mentioned a couple things in this outlook to our customers. There's a mid-June cold front around the 17th. That was back on the 1st. And I also mentioned, full transparency, I had no interest in making June forecasts that dry, because it normally finds a way to rain. It just does. It normally rains. We've seen dry signals mount for a couple years during times like this, and then all of a sudden it just rains. And so, full transparency here, I'm not overly confident here. I'm not trying to, act like I have all the answers here, because I don't. I am concerned. This is a note slide I put out on the 3rd. And, my concern was this over the top, this north central U.S. ridging, southern Canadian prairie, Great Lakes ridge that keeps trying to surface in these clusterings, these subseasonal models, and these seasonal models. And I'm concerned because that is a very dry and warm pattern for areas that are already very, very dry and warm, from Michigan to Iowa to the Dakotas. It's dry there. No matter which way you spin it, the departures are big. Okay, they are big. There's no doubt about it. And this is kind of when we started talking about this last week. Okay, now when we were talking even earlier on, late May. This was on the 26th of May, actually, 27th. I'm sorry. We talked about it's possible that late June we're going to be looking at probably a significant warmer risk here developing, and I think that's going to start really kind of taking hold. So that's kind of the preface of the video. Let's talk real quick here about the next 7 days precipitation and what we're looking at. So this is a 7-day rainfall forecast, just using a blend of different weather models here and some human forecaster input from the Weather Prediction Center. Adequate rains, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky. There's plenty of crop in here too, down into the Arklatex regions, or I'm sorry, the Arkansas, eastern Arkansas region here. Arklatex too, western Tennessee Valley there, and the Mid-Atlantic states. Adequate rains. But keep in mind, this time of year, in June, most folks here average about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches of rain per week. That's the average rainfall in June. That's just what you normally get. So you have to argue that for Indiana, your average rain, Illinois, you're below, Ohio, you're technically above. Now we look at this at the percent of normal, and it illustrates that. Technically, Illinois rain this week, even though you're going to get some. Technically, it is below the average, about 50 to 75% of the normal. Again, above normal, 125% to as much as 200% of the normal from Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, up through Ohio the next 7 days. And look at this. Above normal rains are targeted for North Dakota. And I do believe that to be possible because we are going to see a decent low pressure system run into some nice thermal gradient. The ridge, low pressure is going to run into that ridge. And I think we're going to see some shower thunderstorm activity. Overall, though, Iowa, this is not good for Iowa. Okay? It's not good for Nebraska, northern Kansas, northwest Missouri as well. It's dry this week. All right? It's a dry forecast the next 7 days. Let's look at this pattern just here at the 500 millibar pattern. This is the GFS, the Ensemble. I'm going to take it out here just through Friday. We kind of see this trough wanting to work into the ridge right here. That's where you're going to get those North Dakota rains as that low pressure system moves through. And then we kind of watch this 500 millibar pattern. We see this northwest flow develop momentarily aloft, where I think we get some thunderstorm clusters here in the Central Plains. Some of those could be strong here. This is late weekend into early next week. And then we kind of see this pattern persist a little bit. There's the June cold front we talked about in the eastern ag belt, Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley. We're going to see a pullback in temperatures. We talked about this over a week ago, and I do believe we're going to see a cool down. But that's going to come with a drier period as well, okay? So keep that in mind. But in Indiana, Ohio, Southern Illinois, I'm not overly concerned with a drier period right now, especially after we're going to get all this rain coming up. That's not a problem here, okay, in the eastern Corn Belt, the eastern third of it, if you will. We should continue to roll forward here, getting out into day 10, day 11. What we want to watch is for tendencies to bring this back, bring this ridging back. So see where it's at right now. See how it's really strong over the northern U.S., the Great Lakes, Canadian prairies, and there's this deep negative P&A, this deep trough in the northwest. That trough pumps up this ridge. It exacerbates things. Again, it's a drier pattern overall, and it's a hotter pattern. Well, after the June pullback, after we get beyond probably the 20th to the 22nd of June, I'm worried that same pattern can come back, only with a little bit more of a bite to it, if you will. So let's look at this real quick. What did the European look like with rainfall here over on Friday morning on the left? Last Friday, this was June 4th, so before the weekend. You can see it really didn't have any rain in North Dakota for the most part. In South Dakota, Iowa dry. Roll it forward, same period. Okay, so from 10 days to set the next 7 days. Got wetter in the Ohio Valley, all right, and a little bit wetter here. Still inadequate rains. No rain for Iowa, southern Minnesota at all. And keep in mind, there is there is a ton of crop right here, a ton of it. Probably that's the most concentrated area really in the Corn Belt. But you go down to the GFS, and the 10-day it had on Friday had the rain in North Dakota. It still has it, and if not, it even trended stronger. My money here over the next 7 days is going to come into this GFS model. I just think it's right. I think the European's too dry, and it has this tendency to do this. This European likes to just grab onto dryness and really exacerbate it. Has a problem seeing these southerly or northwesterly flow patterns, and generally the GFS just locks onto these and does a better job. I like the GFS between now and the next 8 days, essentially. Okay, it's still not good for southern Minnesota, Iowa, into Kansas and eastern Nebraska. It's still dry in here. Okay, so that's again something to at least consider or to be worried about. When we look at things here on how they've trended from the ensembles, here's the week 2 EPS from Friday rolled into the latest. You can see the drier period via the European ensemble. Boy, if you ask the European ensemble, you're going to be hard to come by any rain. I think it's too dry, but you can see it did roll forward drier. So I have to mention it because it is a risk to the forecast package. And, no doubt about it. I mean, for the most part, it's not a pattern that promotes widespread rainfall regardless. This was week 2 on Friday, so this is rolled in here now. This is day 5 to day 12 essentially on the right. Okay. But then you look here at temperatures. The European didn't do very well at seeing the cold front that we mentioned early last week, and we are going to see a pullback in those temperatures. Okay. Here's how the GFS did. Week 2 from Friday on the top left, all right, rolled into the latest. You can see it has trended drier, which does warrant concern that it could be trending towards the already drier European weather model. Regardless, that low is going to run into that ridge up here in the North Dakota, and you're going to get needed rain up here. You're going to get some rain up here. But again, not a widespread pattern to support a lot of rainfall. Getting into the heart of June, it's just not a wet pattern. Okay, the old week 2 on the left, the new on the right. Again, seeing that cold front. GEFS overall just a little bit warmer though. Okay, here's the precipitation departures and the temperature departures that we're favoring. Okay, again, here's a dry week 1 forecast for areas that has continued to be dry or are dry. Again, wet like we talked about here, wet like we talked about here. We fully support this. Canadian prairies, some rain, as well. This week 2 period, again, the pullback and the jet kind of goes, again, more extended, but kind of orients itself this way. Not a precipitation pattern. Again, it's very favorable. That's mid-June. Very, very warm here. Week 1, we continue to see departures, 7-day departures running 10 to 15 degrees above the average. We keep it very warm in here. For week 2, the cold front allows for some relief from Texas to Indiana up into the mid-Atlantic, into the north and east. And again, that's the pullback. I'm concerned this pattern here will make a comeback as we get into late June and possibly torch this pattern. When we look at our outside of the box methods, our organic weather model, or weather forecasting techniques, if you will, we watch the big cold front here in East Asia. That's already happened. This was an observed analysis up here. Okay, that's going to be the June cold fronts, correlating nicely. But then we start to see East Asia, Korean islands, Japan start to really ridge out after this. Suggestions of a bigger heat ridge coming back, and look at how it's kind of oriented over the northern Korean islands. We also want to look at the Alaskan islands here, the Bering Sea. Okay, we see more of a ridging pattern, suggesting that again that could be the late June, early July pattern, and that's something we're concerned with. Okay, here's the CPC week 2 analogs, and these are concerning. What I want you to look at real quick, I know this is a longer video, but what I want you to look at is this big ridge here over the northern U.S., the Canadian prairies, trough back out west, okay, trough in here, a little bit of a very strong or amplified omega block type pattern. The problem is you can cut moisture off in these patterns and get very dry very quickly. A lot of 1988 and 1989 showing up in these analogs, okay? And again, if you look at NWS Des Moines and their tweet this morning with the precipitation in central Iowa, it makes you wonder. So I looked at the global wind pattern, the angular momentum in 1988 versus this year, the last 30 days versus the up and coming. And you can see a very eerily similar global wind pattern that may look to evolve here in the coming days. The angular momentum may really start to decline here and go negative mid to late June. It's very concerning for extremely warm temperatures and more of a ridge. Again, less favorable precipitation patterns. I'm not saying this is an 88 repeat. Please do not take words and fabricate them out of my mouth and say the BAM guy is saying 1988 is coming. Not what I'm saying at all. It's interesting to see the analogs. It's interesting to see the global wind patterns very, very similar to that. Okay? So what I did is I looked at the new European seasonal, all right, and here's what I saw. I saw a lot more support. This just came out 2 days ago for this and for this overall to continue. These are the areas we've been concerned about for multiple months now. I saw this over-the-top ridging, this weak trough in here, and not a lot of blocking being noted in the model. Okay, so what I did is I looked at the top 7 driest ag belt years on record: 83, 84, 88, 91, 12, 13, and 20. Believe it or not, 2020 last year was the 7th driest corn belt year for June, July, August. I looked at the 500 millibar pattern for those, and this is what I noted. I noted this deep trough in here, big ridge up to the north. Okay, very, very warm northwestern third, or basically northwest half of the corn belt, and overall very dry weather pattern. Okay, look at the heights. Look at the forecast the next 30 days. GFS, European. Okay, a little bit of a trough in here. Trough over Greenland. Trough over Greenland. You look at the match here to the years I plotted, and that's where I want to leave it. Okay, long video today. You get what I'm saying. It's something that's a concern that we're watching. Again, not saying this is a repeat of these years. Similar patterns is what I'm trying to point out. It's a similar pattern, and that's what I really want to bring to everyone's attention. We need to watch this. It's just something we need to watch, as there are risks here for warm and dry going forward. So we'll keep you posted. If you have any questions, let us know. Thanks for checking out today's video from bamwx.com.